Welcome back to the Coaches Playground podcast. I'm super excited to be joined today by Loretta Cella, referred to me by a good friend of mine and part of the Maverick coaching team, Christy Watson. Loretta, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Loretta, as you guys heard, does a lot of work with health and wellness practitioners, a lot of breath work. That's kind of how this came about, because I'm super interested in that kind of stuff. You had mentioned in terms of like, I'd love to just dig into your background a little bit, that you have, you've had a lot of experiences, both good and bad in life, that have kind of led you here, where you were broke, you were having struggles with like what kind of where you stood about a lot of issues, unsure of what's ahead. Talk to me a little bit about one of the big things that I've learned is like, if we can look back and see them in the right light, like every single experience, no matter how bad in the moment, teaches us something and brings us to where we are now. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I have a firm belief that we're here to evolve.
Oh, good start. Good start. Okay.
And it's a continuous evolution until we pass, and you look at any cycles. I do a lot of work in and around nature, using nature as an example, right? We all see cycles of growth and death. Like it just it comes from that stem. And so I know from my personal life and my professional life, my academic life, it all aligns that when we experience hardship in our lives, it's a prime opportunity to grow and change. And we as humans we don't love change, is basically what it comes down to. We don't love change.
Hate it.
Yeah. And so in order for change to happen, something has to happen in our lives to create a bit of an abrupt realization or experience. For some of it, I use the term trauma. And then we take a little bit more of a look at our lives to align ourselves into more wellness, more health, more whatever it is that we come into. And so those challenging times are can be, I should say, by choice, a part of our evolution if we choose it to be. There's lots of obviously factors that are tied to that, but I look at everything that's happened in my personal life, the hardships, and those have actually, on the other side, have actually been some of the most powerful pieces of change in my life. And allowed me to see, feel, and experience things from a totally different level than had I not gone through that experience.
Yeah. And I think really, everyone has these types of tough experiences. They're, along a spectrum, I'm sure, of like really difficult to not so difficult, but it's all about how you take it in, right? It's all about how you experience that. But really, yeah, there's like two ways you can go with it. You can play the blame game, which I'm sure you've done. I know I've done, where you just decide like, oh, that's not me, or that's not my fault. Or you can let it change you for the better, right? You can let it change you for the worse, or you can let it change you for the better, and let it help you, as you said, grow and evolve. What would you say in terms of these types of events? What was one of the biggest, and whether you want to share the event or not, what was one of the biggest lessons or the biggest growth moments that you had, where you just like, it just took off in terms of the next step? You're like, yeah, where do I start?
Where do I start is right. Yeah, no, I've had a lot of them. I think the biggest part was I had a very challenging adolescence. So it involved drugs, and it involved really big rebelliousness in the world. And that actually turned into a realization around a very powerful idea or concept or truth in our world that evolved into creating a charity that took me into all over the world. And so that challenging adolescent piece and that understanding. So I guess I could just speak a little bit about it. Is I grew up in a very Italian family and had a very particular way of how I should be in the world and what I should look like as a woman or as a girl, and what my roles and all those things should look like. And yet I grew up in a society where it was like kind of a free-for-all, where you just got to experience all of these things. And where the I mattered most, I matter, I, what I want, what I need. But I grew up in a culture where it was we
Mm.
mattered, what we needed was important. And although I can look back at it now and maybe if somebody explained it to me that actually both are important, but it didn't happen, they were separate. And so what I came to understand actually very early on, thanks to some amazing role models in my life, was that both pieces, the I of what I want, what I need, what we experience in North American life, and the we, which we experience in most other cultures, those two together are actually really, really important. And when you nourish both, incredible things start to emerge, not just for self, but for community and for the world. And that's how my nonprofit was born, because I could see how there was so much struggle between the two of them when I came to my own realization. And so in 2007, I was mentored by a master coach in Toronto, Ontario. I had left to do a work contract for the YWCA, worked in a housing unit for abused women and their children, experienced extreme levels of violence and unsafety and just lots of different stuff. And realized, like, hold on a second, there's a piece here. And this master coach says, I think you have something to offer that's beyond what it is that you're experiencing. And can I support you on this?
Mm.
And so that evolved into me creating my own charity, because nothing I could see already existed that was like that. I'm a firm believer in collaboration. And I created a charity called, at that point, it was called Passion Foundation. It was the idea of if passion is the foundation of everything that we do, incredible things can happen in the world. But really what it was the creation of a curriculum called the Elements of Success. And that basically walked children and youth and eventually adults, because that's how it evolved through my own experiences, around the connection between I and we, building skill and inner leadership so that they can create projects in the community that were meaningful to them.
Wow.
And it started to be like something like really small, and then it just kind of took on a life of its own.
Well, I mean, you said it, right? Like when the foundation is passion, there's no question that it's just going to take on a life of its own. It's gonna become something that you probably never thought it would be, right? Like
Yeah.
that's so incredible. And it sounds like I find this a lot. I've been digging into some inner child work, which I'm sure you know very well, around like your inner child or that adolescence. There was just a misunderstanding around like what was expected of you. And I find so many people have those moments throughout their childhood where like that, their brain just hasn't adapted or evolved to a place where they can handle these kinds of things, these kinds of traumas or these kinds of situations. Like your brain just hadn't quite figured out, how do I and we work together, right? And therefore needed a little bit of support, needed some work. I'm sure it still is work on that kind of that side of things, making sure that you can work on yourself all the time. But I love hearing that something that just came about so organically and so real. Like it was like, well, there's nothing else that serves these people the way that I needed to be served. Right.
Mhm.
So let's create it, has actually grown and helped people. What would you say? Maybe this is a long drawn out answer, but what are those elements of success that you guys talk about in
Yeah.
the?
So success is an acronym. So the first one is self, right? And it's the same. I have an adult model that's called Leaders for Humanity. And it's the same model, but it's adultified, if you will.
Right, right.
And so the first one is self. And looking into self and self-reflection and teaching the kids of what I like and what I don't like, and because we forget, we are so consumed by the outside world and all these impressions that we receive, that oftentimes people don't really know what it is that they like and love and drives them, because of all these traumas and experiences that we have. And
Hmm.
so the first one is self. The second one is understanding that limitations are self-imposed.
Cool.
So and that's a juicy one, because people don't want to look at that. They want to point the finger out. They don't want to look in. And so we help the kids to understand and look at what labels they were placing upon themselves. and why those might exist, and what were the gifts that were underneath it. So this next letter is C, which is courage. And that courage is to see something different and be with something different. Once they have a good, understanding and connection and have transformed some of that dialogue and experience, the next C is around cooperation, community. So now that I have a better sense of me and a better sense of I, then I can step in, and you'll know this from your own experiences. When I feel good about myself, I step into community different. When I am not feeling so great, I generally want different type of community around me, or none at all. I want to separate myself from it for lots of different reasons. So we go through the I, we go through the, coming into greater foundation of self, greater understanding of community. And then we do an evaluation of where am I right now and what do I need moving forward. So now that I've redefined who I am, redefined a connection to community, I then can evaluate life from a fully different lens. And then the next letter is S, which is of skills. So now that I know what I need, how do I go out there and get it? What is it that I like? Do I need a fitness coach? Do I need this? Do I need, what is it that I need? And then the last S in success is about service. So we know full circle, I have a master's in leadership, and it wasn't until I did my master's degree that I fully understood why I created the series like this, is that when we grow into self and we can attach to community, the only way to sustain is through service. So that's of giving back, right? So you take any type of coaching, like you grow in yourself, you then build your community in and around you. And then what do you need to do? You feel so excited and passionate and called to service. We give. And that creates a cycle of sustainability. So I would teach the kids basic project management, give them $100 or $50, or depending on the country we would get in, we would just pool resources of one way or another. And they would create something that was meaningful to them and what was true to them in their life to give back to their community.
So these kids are like in their teens and they're learning this stuff.
Some of them as young as 11 or 12. Yeah.
I honestly, just to be fully transparent, I feel like I'm trying to keep up right now. I'm 33. And I feel like I'm trying to like keep up with what you're saying and like, okay, what, cause I think I came to a lot of this self-awareness work later than that. That's for sure. I don't want to say
most people have.
Yeah. The majority of people kind of come into it in that age of 25 to 30, if they've had some experiences.
50, 60.
Right. Yeah. But it seems so these kids, it seems, are just probably because they've had such experiences that they do have the life experience to relate to. Would that be like, I can't imagine myself learning this stuff at 11 or 12. I just don't know how I would have done with it. Like, do you find, I guess maybe we just don't give kids enough credit?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm shaking my head like you're seeing me, but the listeners aren't. Yeah, so we don't give enough credit, and when we formulate it in a way that's comprehensible to them and their level, it's all the same. So it's kind of like if you have a really good coaching model, right? You go to school and you do coaching school, and you integrate it. A really good coach integrates it into their personal experiences, does their own work.
Yep.
And then puts in a way that's digestible for those that they want to serve, their target market.
Love
right?
that.
And so I did this, that unbeknownst to me, I always say I'm divinely guided, but I literally, created this, curated this, this series, and did it in a way that spoke to the kids and where they were at. And then when it became Leaders for Humanity, this course that I've taken into different colleges and different institutions, that became, I adultified the wording, the language, but it's all the same stuff. It's just done differently. Yeah.
It's the same foundational skills. Yeah. I love, it's interesting. I just wanted to pull on a couple threads there. I mean, the first piece of self, I feel, I'm going to go out on a limb here and let me know how you feel about this. I feel like this is one of the number one things missing in our society. Maybe it's just in the North American society, is a lack of self-awareness, a lack of, like, I guess you could call it consciousness. There's so many people that just they're existing. I would say. And it's interesting. I was listening to Think What You Want about Russell Brand. I think he's got very interesting takes on a lot of things. And he was talking on a podcast about we need to start looking at our inner environment more, our inner world, because we can't just keep consuming the way that we have in the outer world without changing what's inside, or without at least taking a look at what's inside of us. And I feel like that really hit me around, like, it wasn't until I started on the journey of self-discovery and self-awareness that I could really realize, like you said, kind of how I fit into the world. Because if you don't know who you are, how do you know how you're going to fit into the world? You just kind of are following the social norms and what people tell you, right? Or in the case of people who have had difficult upbringings, they're just, this is where generational patterns take hold. They're just following what they saw in their parents. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so we either respond from consciousness or we respond from trauma.
Mm. Well, that's about all I needed to hear on that. That's perfect.
Right. So, and I define trauma. I define trauma as an abrupt separation of self that
Right.
creates pain, grief, and sadness.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be. And I was just off. I just got off with a client and stepped into you, and her and I had this conversation because she kept saying to me, she's in her 30s, and she kept saying to me, man, my answers are really selfish. I feel really selfish. This is all about me. I feel really, and I was like, of course, when we're in a state of trauma or in a pattern of not being fully conscious, we can't think about other people. And if we do, it's more of a martyrdom, which is also trauma based. So when we become conscious, like you were saying, or more mindful of our inner workings, is we can see where we're triggered and how we're responding. Are we consuming unconsciously based on the media that we are consuming? Or are we making decisions from a place of wholeness and wellness? Right.
And to
Yeah.
further that, you had mentioned, like, with the community piece and the connection piece, when things are great, yeah, it's all good, we can connect with the community. When things aren't great, as you said, with trauma, I've found so much with our clients, when they're struggling, instead of what we want them to do, which is, hey, reach out, book a call, let us know you're struggling, they just tend to just turn in, and they almost like implode on themselves, right? Because they're like, well, no one can know. And this is, maybe
Shame,
it's that
there.
safety. Yeah. They're trying to, they've got that guilt. They're like, oh, I've let them down. Right. And they're trying to just feel safe within themselves. But really what you need when you are struggling, almost more so, is the community, is the other people who are like, hey, guess what? I've been exactly where you are and I get it,
It's the we
or
part.
I know how you're feeling, kind of thing. Right.
Yeah, it's that we part.
That's the we part. Yeah. Like I actually have had a number of people say to me, because I'm in a space, I don't like to call myself a business coach, but at the end of the day, I'm in a space where that's what we do. We help people build their businesses, and it's rife with terrible human beings and terrible, just bad systems and, snake oil sales and all that kind of stuff. And I've had numerous people say to me, you're the first person who actually listened to me, who actually asked me questions and listened to me. And that's why I ended up signing up. And then the container proved to be that same thing. And I've realized, like, it's unbelievable the lack of connection that we feel in a world where we are. And I know this is, maybe this sounds like we've heard this before, but in a world where we're so connected, seemingly, the lack of real, authentic, true connection that we feel. Oh, yeah. Anyway, I'm finally wrapping my head around this. Anyway,
It's really like, because what happens is that when we kind of come into that space and that understanding and that healing, we actually never feel alone because
right.
we have the internal resources and the healing in the space to either reach out and get connection or tap in and
Or
receive it
both.
yourself, or both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's cool. Like, where it's, you give yourself the voice, like maybe it's confidence or whatever it is, but just like that, the power within yourself to go, like, I have resources here, whether it's within me or around me, and I can reach out and I can use these resources. And call that selfish, but also, like, I mean, I can't remember who said it, but they said, selfishness is the most selfless thing you can do most of the time, because again, filling your cup, right? Like you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're being selfless all the time, give, and not actually getting anything yourself, I mean, you're not going to be able to give anymore at some point. You have to be selfish, use your resources, make sure that you're taken care of. Like you said, that inner working is understood and is coming from a place of purpose and not a place of trauma or a place of consciousness. And then you can actually go out there and do. That's where that authentic or organic growth of a business or of whatever it is that you want starts coming. And you're like, that's why it's so hard to explain to people. Like, really, it's not the strategies and the tactics and all that stuff that you think it is to grow your business. It's getting this figured out, getting your heart and soul figured out. That's what's going to fix things, or that's what's going to move things along.
It's what align things to create that what we use as fluid action or alignment or whatever it is that you want to, that manifestation. That's how that stuff happens. I'm a firm believer, and I use this all the time. If you want to heal the world and you want to make the world a better place, start with yourself. Don't start. And I know, because I literally went over $16,000 into debt for charity. I literally started my charity and I gave everything that I had, blood, sweat, tears, money, I gave it away. And then I would see these larger organizations like the Bill Clinton Foundation. I remember this one time we were in Kenya, and it happened in other countries, and I would see them walk around with their little roller suitcases and their fancy, and they were just like eating like at the most expensive restaurants. And I was like, what? You're here for charity work, people, and you're spending all of this money on, and I would get angry. And what I realized was, because part of me was sacrificing, so I was on the other side of the pendulum, and I believe everything's on polarity, and I was giving everything away that I had. And that wasn't right either, because what kind of example was that setting for people who were impoverished, who didn't have anything? It wasn't doing anything. And so when the pendulum swung and I did my own healing and understanding around that, and I started filling my cup differently and looking at my traumatic responses and coming from a whole place, it was amazing what showed up, and how much money came into the nonprofit, and how much clarity and partnerships just started coming in.
Yeah, I heard we had someone on, he'll be maybe a week or two before this episode comes out, and he said, it, whatever you want, if you want, and then insert whatever it is, give it away. Give it away. Maybe not to the extent you were, but if you want something in the world, give more of it away. If you want to be happier, make people happy. All those types of things. I wanted to take a little bit of a look at, you recently decided to go all in on your business, full-time on your own coaching business. And you had said that you had been in 9-to-5s, you'd had the safe gig, and then you were doing this as the side hustle. Talk to me about the experience of or what it came to it about leaving that 9-to-5, like the fear that came in there.
Oh, it was fearful. There was trauma there.
Yeah.
It was hard. And it wasn't by choice, interesting enough. So I spent many years working in and out of government because it was safe, secure, pension. I had everything that was needed for me. And every time I'm like, I can't do this anymore because I can't handle the constraints. I would then leave and find another job and then somehow I would get pulled back to this safety net. I would just continuously get pulled back. It was a toxic relationship. I just continued getting pulled back, right? And then it came to a point in 2019 where that had to stop. And it became not in my choice. I got let go of my job. And it just was not a fit. I wanted to do way more than they would allow me to do, and there was conflict. And so I got let go, and I was like, what did I just? And I stopped because I didn't get let go on bad terms. So I was kind of like, I did this. We go through this thing of like, where do we get through? Anyways, long story short, I came into a place where I have a choice. I can go back and get another government job because I had opportunity, or I can be more aligned. I can stop this cycle that I've been on. I can become more aligned. as an independent mother of a toddler, there's a lot more risk,
Mhm.
right? Mortgage, all those little pieces. But when I stopped living, when I chose to stop being in fear and started being in trust and being called, trust that this was an opportunity, looking for alignment, being in my core values. How can I create that? And I said, this is the time. This is the
Mhm.
time. Now I can step in. And actually the timing, if I look back, could not have been better, because I chose to get certified in breathwork, body therapy breathwork. And just as the pandemic hit, and I can tell you there's a story behind it. I'll stay away from the story of it, but it was just so aligned and so perfect, because so many people were coming into a state of being with themselves and not comfortable with it. And so the anxiety, the fear, the panic, the stress, the depression, and that's what actually started growing the business.
Yeah, I cannot tell you the amount of stories that I have. It's starting to become, like you saw me nodding there. It's starting to become just such a normal story that, something happens seemingly negative, out of your control, and you have the option. And I've had numerous clients in this position too, where you have the option to go back to the safe thing that I've said this numerous times. There's nothing wrong with that either.
No.
I get it, especially when there's other factors at play. There's partners, there's children. I get it.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that. But the other option is to take the route that you've never taken, that's unknown, that's scary as shit, that you have no idea what's going to happen. Like, you could have started it and it could have you could still be sitting there, making no money and trying to provide for your family, but it's that act of, first of all, leaping into the unknown, and kind of saying to the universe, I'm ready to surrender and just go all in on this thing. And here's my, like, penance to you, that I'm going to tell you, like, I'm going to give up the safety and security. And then you land softly on a bed of a whole bunch of people needing exactly what you're ready to provide in that moment, because of your experience and your education and all that stuff. It's happened more times than I'd like to admit, that I've heard, even on this podcast and with friends and with clients. And I just, like, first of all, I mean, congrats for just taking that leap. I mean, that's amazing. And also, I think it's so amazing that someone is there to serve those people who need them. Um, Further to that, you talk about uh, your job of, like, making transitions easier, or for serving those who serve others. Can you just speak to that a little bit? Like, what, obviously the transition of COVID, of, working from home and being with yourself more, and not being able to numb things out as much as we used to. But how exactly do you help them with that? Or what exactly does that mean? Maybe in a little bit more broader terms.
Mhm. Yeah, so I chose the kind of transitions made easier, because what I do is provide the essentials for transition. And so what happens is, oftentimes we are faced with an opportunity, if we choose to look at that way,
Mhm.
for transitioning, right? Or we're faced with a health issue or an overwhelm. Like, how many massage therapists and other people that I have as clients that are so overwhelmed because they're working with people who are overwhelmed. And so there's this being overwhelmed by working with, like, there's just these cycles that are happening, and it's really hard to transition out of that. It is. It's like, even as a wellness practitioner, it's hard to transition, because um, you're just so stuck in the game of serving,
Yep.
right? And so taking out and having a step back. So what I do is make it easier for people. You can ask me about any transition, and I can tell you I've probably been through it, or I probably, in the last 17 years or whatever, that I've been working with people. And so the really job for me is to be able to see, hear, feel, and experience what a person is going through or has gone through, where they would kind of like to go or where they're interested in going, because some people don't know what they want. They just want more of what does that look like? Or they just want more wellness, or they want a job change, but they have no idea. And so they'll come in, and what I'll do is I'll provide them with a pathway, either 60 days or 90 days, 90 days or 6 months in order to get there. And then I have a formula and a practice that is partly prescribed, but mostly open to where the client wants to go and helping them to transition there.
Mhm.
So I help them with the coaching, I help them with the breath work, I help them with the tools, the journal prompts, like all of that stuff. It's holistic. So they don't feel like they're wondering where or how things are going to go. They know that they're fully supported.
Yeah, I love that. And you talked about like them not knowing, like they just know that where they're at now is not working for them, right? Like it's like this is not where I can live for any much longer, right? You talked about in your on your website the feelings of burnout, overwhelm, anxiety. Do you feel, coming back to what we were talking about before, is this sometimes just like that lack of like consciousness, lack of awareness, where they're just like, I don't know what it is, but it's not good. And they've probably been following the rabbit hole of what they've been told to do or what society has led them to believe, which I think we can both say is often a lie. Would you say that that's kind of like the culprit of that, is just a lack of consciousness and awareness?
I think there's two pieces of it. I think there's a lack of consciousness. I think there's an overconsumption or a veil of what we should do. Like you said, like there's a prescribed way of success and what that looks like, or wellness, or what that looks like. I think that's part of it. I think part of it is we're so disconnected from our body. So we know for a fact that over 80% of disease or disease is actually preventable.
Hmm.
If you look at Dr. Lipton's work and studies, and but we're in so much. Even I was talking to my nurse practitioner. She says she has never seen so many people come to her for so many big things, all things that actually could have been prevented, but in the consumption of trauma from social media, from the activities in our world, from this pandemic, it's manifesting in people because, and they don't know how to process it. They don't even know what it looks like for the most part. They just know that they want something different. And so I think, like I said, there's two parts of it. It's a disconnection from our body, and it's kind of the veil of what it looks like. And so people step in going, I'm confused and overwhelmed and foggy and fatigued. What do I do, please? And I'm actually physically doing it because I know I've heard it so many times. Like,
Right.
what do I just need to know. I want more joy. I want more happiness. I want more inner freedom.
Like, help,
Yeah.
please. And that makes so much sense to me. And I want to pull on that a little bit, talking about disconnected from our body. This is something I have heard so much from breathwork practitioners, healers, any of that type of stuff. And I know that this is along the lines of integrating breath work. Would you agree, like in your practice? Okay. So, okay. So can you explain to me, this is a curious question myself. I have always struggled, and maybe this is my kind of black and white, this needs to make sense brain. This is where I've struggled with this, is dropping into your body, connecting to your body, which is what breath work. I've experienced the positives of breath work. I have done it, and I have experienced the incredible high and also the incredible just like insights. What exactly does that mean? Connecting to your body, people, disease, there's disconnection from body. What exactly does that mean?
Well, we live in a society, or many of us live in a society where every decision, every action, everything is based in our head,
100%. Okay.
right? Everything has been formed from, and actually it's interesting with the uprise and awareness of the tragedies of Indigenous peoples in Canada. This
Mhm.
is and the school systems and what they ingrained from the very, how they took Indigenous people out of Indigenous their own knowledge and education system. This is it's become heightened. Like I have a heightened awareness of it right now. Our education system, North American, is all about the brain, math, science. Like everything is about calculation and about a certain way of being. That's left-brained.
Yeah.
Right-brained is more creative and expansive and creating possibilities and looking at abstract and stepping in there. We separate the two, both are important, and yet we're all up here. When we get into the body, um, we have a heightened connection to pains, to feelings, to emotions, to sensations that happen. So a great example is I got a little pain, let's say in my trap, and I just notice it and I just kind of shake it off and I just keep going. And I just, because I'm in my head, I got things to do, I got places to go, I got things to serve, I got boxes to lift, I've got whatever. And then that pain just gets more and more. And I continue to power through it because my mind is telling me to keep going, keep going, keep going. And by the end of the day, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot move. I have a headache. My neck is stiff. I've got tingling in my fingers, like there's all of these pieces. And I know I carry, a 45-pound child off my hip, right? And I just keep doing, I'm like, oh, it's kind of painful. I stretch it. And then I just keep going because she needs to be carried. But had I just to stop and be present to that and be in my body with it, I could eliminate the long-term impacts that would have. So when we do breath work and we get into the body, we can actually intercept and intervene,
Right.
and sometimes even prevent those things from happening.
Yeah, this makes sense. The heightened connection really makes sense to me. The heightened connection between the two. It's funny because I grew up. Now that I've done a whole lot of work, I realize how much I love being creative. But I grew up in a household that really valued, getting good grades and all those types of things. And I conformed. I was like, okay, well, if you're going to validate me based on that, well, hell yeah, A's, A+, here you go, guys. Right. And it's been a real struggle because that has always given me such good feedback. It got me into the career that I started in fitness. And then, that also moved me into where I am now. It's gotten me great feedback, but now is when it's like, okay, that gets you this far. You have to tap into the other side. It's time to tap into the other side to heighten the connection between left brain and right brain, between mind and body, if you want to get to the next level. If you wanted the next level of service or the next level of, service with clients, like connection with clients, but also if you want the next level of impact and money and all those things, that really makes sense to me, allowing, providing the space to connect those pieces. Would that be right?
Yeah. So what happens is that we go about, this energy gets stored in the body. The type of breath work that I do is a 3-part open mouth breath work. So we're breathing through the mouth. And so what happens is when we, in yoga and other breathwork practices, you breathe through the nose. The nose activates the mind. So if you just take a moment and breathe right now, you will feel it. You'll feel it come in, right? When we breathe through the mouth, we feel it in the body. Right. So the breath work that I chose to do, or was guided to do, however you want to look at it, is a 3-part through the mouth, which is done in a pattern, which then what happens is the body then activates the energy, the breath activates the energy that's blocked in the body, and you have physiological experiences. This also puts us into the fight, flight, or freeze response, which stops the brain from acting. Right. So our full brain function isn't present when we're in fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, however you want to look at it. And so when we're doing this breath and we're doing it with intention, and I do somatic work with my clients as well to actually locate where the energy is in the body, then we can actually release it and then tap into the intelligence of the body to create more healing. So when you come out, if you've done this breath before, you come out of the experience, you're kind of foggy, yet you're super clear. Your body feels super light and relaxed, and your sleep increases, your clarity increases, your appetite shifts, your water intake, everything shifts because we're being in the body, releasing the stored energy. And then we're able to come at something with clear thought versus the traumatic blocked energy that we're experiencing.
So powerful. Thank you for explaining that in such a eloquent way. You mentioned, so the other breathwork practitioner, we didn't get this deep into the breathwork side of things that I've had on the show. Is he's a recovering addict. And you had mentioned your history, you had a history with drugs. Do you find that this is a great way to kind of find that, I don't want to say that high, because people chase the high for the wrong reason sometimes, but to find that clarity maybe, or that calm and that peace that you get with drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff, but find it naturally?
Yeah, so I tell you something really powerful that happened to me on Saturday, I had a garage sale, and my neighbor,
Amazing.
and I do, yeah. So my neighbor, so every second weekend, I do a beach session, a breathwork session on the beach. And we have this thing called Next Door. It's an app.
Yep.
And so I let my neighbors know that I was having this breathwork session. So two women came that were in their 70s, they're friends, and they thought, we'll try this out. Like, we're hippie coastal folks. We'll come and check this out. So they came, and Saturday, and I hadn't heard back from her. I always do like a 24-hour check-in, because you can have experience. And so Saturday, I'm setting up for my garage or my yard sale, and she comes up the stairs, and I was like, oh, hey, how are you? And so she's like, I came to tell you something really important. And I was like, oh, sure. What's that? I feel a little bit nervous telling you. And I'm like, that's okay. There's no judgment here. She's like, it's about the breath work. And I said, okay. And she said, that was the first time that I have not had a drink in 4 years.
Wow.
And I didn't even drink the next day. So that was 2 days of no drinking and one 60-minute breathwork class.
No kidding.
I've seen some amazing things. Like, I had terrible postpartum anxiety after my daughter, and I tried everything to get rid of it, and it did not. Breathwork was the only thing. That's why I ended up getting certified with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we know for a fact that this type of breathwork in particular is good for addictions and different things. But she's going through grieving, her husband's ill, the pandemic, not seeing her children, like all these things. And she came up here and she was shaking because she was so like excited to tell me, nervous but excited. And I thought to myself, oh, wow. For a 71-year-old woman to come up and have that type of disclosure and that awareness, that for her addiction, for her alcoholism, for her experience, misuse, whatever you want to call it, I try not to label.
Yep.
That was a huge relief for her, because
Mm-hmm.
she didn't feel like she had to, because she had the release.
And I mean, you talk about, we talk about alcohol, drugs. Those are the most common misused things, whatever it is. But I'm also, I mean, what I've seen a lot of around through the pandemic, misuse of social media, overuse of so many of these other, as my coach calls it, digital pacifiers, or other pacifiers that numb things out for us. Yeah. What a great natural way to get back into, first of all, to have that feeling, which is it. I mean, we chase a feeling. So you get that good feeling, but also all the other amazing things that go along with it, instead of the toxicity of some of these other things, right? Like, how powerful is that? Do you have, now I'm obviously going to say you guys should just sign up with Loretta, but if someone just wants to dabble, if someone's just like, what, I don't really 100% know what the hell you're talking about.
Which happens a lot.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the first time, if I hadn't been thrown into it without knowing, I probably wouldn't have shown up for that session at 6:30 in the morning on a beach, with a group that I was with. We thought we were doing a workout. We thought it was going to be like a boot camp, and it turned out, yeah, exactly. That's why, that's what they said. Yeah. But what would you say is a great starting point for someone, or a place where someone can just like, at least kind of feel this out a little bit?
Yeah, so I have some mini sessions on my website that are only like some pre-recordings that are only like, I think they're 10 minutes.
Amazing.
And so you can go on, there's some video on there that you can watch me talk about the breath. There's some information on there. And then there's 2 ones that you can try. And one of them is actually with an award-winning, a Juno-winning artist that we collaborated. We used his music and my breath work and some coaching in there. And so you can pop in there and grab them. They're free. They don't cost anything.
and then just try it out. I would say probably about 20% somewhere, and I don't have the exact calculation, so just off the top of my head, of my clients start there because
Mhm.
they're like, I don't know, like, is this for me? And the vulnerability of showing up in class or doing a one-to-one on me can be a bit much. Um, can be a bit much for people. And so they may not want to lean in right away. And so that's a great way to do it. I don't know if you'll find any on YouTube, but I'm also cautious. So I will share this cautiousness because I think it's really important. This is a therapy, it's a body therapy practice. Doing these sessions by yourself, like a full session, uh, could be more challenging or traumatic than doing it with somebody else.
Yeah.
So, because you have different sensations in the body, different emotions that arise, different experiences that show up, if you're doing these by yourself, there could be some things to consider, and it's not right for everybody. So if you have heart conditions, if you have seizures, if you're pregnant, there are certain things that you are on certain medications, you should not be doing this breath. So that's also to take into consideration as well.
Yeah.
It is powerful. It's like people have like psychedelic experiences as if they were doing drugs while in this realm, right? And no two sessions are the same, so you can never predict.
Yeah, I want to. I will second that. First, you're talking about the safety, but I will also see the experience. So I've done it twice with other people, guided with other people, and it's both times unbelievable. Like more high than any drug or alcohol could ever get me. You know, giggling and just feeling all the feels and all the great things. And then, and I think this is another thing to consider when I try to do it on my own. I find I'm trying to get there again. I'm chasing that again. Um, and then ego comes in, the guilt comes in, the I'm doing this wrong comes in. And without guidance, it's very challenging to pull that back. You know, I've had friends of mine or who have done it before say, like, there's no ego here, you know, and I wish that I had that in the moment. But yeah, if you're not careful, you're not going to get the same experience. But can you also speak to the power of letting go of control, the power of surrender? I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that's happened for me in breath work.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for 5 years now, personally. And then have been teaching it for 18, just over 18 months now, or guiding it is probably a better term. Um, there is when we can surrender, and I always tell this to my A-type personalities, I'm like, I know you're out there and I know you're trying to control this breath to get it perfect. And I'm like, stop. Like, and I'll say it in the middle of my class, I'll just get an intuitive hit and I'll just say it. And I can always see them laugh, like out of the corner of their mouth while they're breathing, they're laughing because they know I'm like catching them, right?
Yeah, she
Um,
got me.
yeah. So yeah, so what happens is when we surrender, when we let go of the control, we open the door to a vastness within us, the possibilities, which creates vulnerability for some folks. But in that vulnerability is exceptional power.
Mm.
And so when we can really like come into the breath and be held in the pattern and be held in the space and let go, we actually tap into a whole different frequency of energy within ourselves that creates this it's just next level. Like I can't even some people tell me like I don't know what Loretta does, but when she does it, it's awesome. And it's just like I feel this sense of freedom. I can't really explain it. And that's what happens. And yeah, it's been the return on investment of getting this training, of doing it in my style, and because I've taken a couple different trainings and then intermixing it with the coaching, is the return that I'm getting for clients is I can't even explain it. It's unreal. It's
And I
unreal.
would say it's interesting because you give them, so they say they don't know what you do. You give them the space and, you know, the safety to surrender, but they're still the ones that have to surrender. They're still the ones that have to let go of that control. And I've firsthand felt that. And I think this is a great lesson of life, of business, is that like the only way you're going to have the success and the things that you want is if you set the intention and then just know, like totally know that the only way to get that to come back to you is to surrender and to let go.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things and that's one of the reasons why I've resisted breath work, because it's really hard. it's really hard to surrender and to not go like, oh, I'm not doing this right. Maybe I need, try and control the situation. Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a client of mine, long time. Most people stay with me for 6 months, 8 months longer. We're just in the breath work if they're done with the coaching. And I have one woman who's a lawyer, and she's in her 50s, and and it's litigation. So she's like very like linear in
Oh
control, like
yeah.
talks things. And I asked her, I said, what do you love most about this? Because the transformation in her life has just been unreal. And she said, there's two things that I love about this most. I don't have to have control. I can be held and it be totally okay, because I trust you. And then the other thing she said to me, which was amazing, she's like, I don't want to talk about my shit. I don't want to talk about the story anymore. I don't want to talk about the things that led me to, where I am. And I get to work through it in the breath work
Right. Within you.
within me. I get to work it within me. So I don't have to tell my story over and over again. And the amount of trauma release and experience and all of that. She's like, she's like, I feel younger. I feel more in control, but yet I'm like stepped back from control. And I'm like she doesn't use the word surrender because it's not in her vocabulary.
Right.
But,
Right.
or kind of like, but she's like, I can step back and I can just like trust and create and be in that place.
Mm.
And so that's like, to me, that speaks for itself, right? Like, it's pretty amazing.
That's what it's all about. I love that. I love that. One last slight curveball for you. I didn't prep you for this. What is the number one thing, just before I let you go, what's the number one thing that you've learned from becoming a mother?
One.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, just to give you some context, my
Yeah.
coach, every time that I hang out with our nephew, he's almost 3. He's like, kids are the best teachers. What did he teach you? Even if you're not looking for it, he'll teach you something. So, I love to hear people who are parents. What have you learned?
Mhm. Well, you know what? I think the perfect word is surrender.
Yeah. Let's keep going on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, like my daughter is extremely intelligent, very sassy, and very clear on what she likes and does not like. And she's incredible at negotiation, even at 3. It's really people are like,
Yes.
really? So it's really like that surrender of just like trusting that she is, I guess, trust that she is evolving and I'm evolving to support her. So as we're growing together, her and I, is that as long as I have an open mind, it's when I actually have a closed mind and I'm stuck in a way that I was brought up or a way that I saw was important to nurture or to help assist and grow and evolve in my way, I get in the way
Right.
of her own evolution. And so when I can step back from that and be present to it, of course, I'm still putting boundaries and bedtimes and all that kind of stuff, but I'm doing it from a place where I'm surrendering into having it to be and look a certain way.
Right. So as long as you're willing to grow and evolve with her, you can't do it wrong. Right. That's so great. Well, thank you so much for this. Like I said, there was, I think, a few moments through there where I was trying to play catch up. I was trying to be like, oh, should I maybe be in this conversation right now? But I think that's the best part is we're challenging to really grow and to learn new things. Um, if people are interested in learning from you, I know it's relatively easy to find you. What's the best places? Where are you hanging out the most?
Instagram. I kind of eliminated most of my social media, so my Facebook page, all the
Right.
other stuff. I have a website and Instagram. I try to keep it minimal, and it's super easy to find me because it's my first and last name.
Loretta Cella, it's all going to be there. And yeah, go and just start the conversation and see what it's all about, like I did. So thanks so much for being here. Anything else you wanna leave the listeners with?
No, if you're interested in breathwork or interested, please like take those freebies that are on my website and have at her and see what the experience is like for you.
I will be doing that. Hopefully others do as well. Thanks so much for being here.
Have a great day.